Hi everyone, in this video we're going to create a full stack authentication system. Let me show you what we're going to build today. Here we can give your username, email address, password as well as confirm password, and then if you sign up it will automatically redirect to our home page, and inside the home page we can create message like this and we can see those messages in here. Let's say if I create a message hello world, and if I click on create message it will instant create this message and show in here. And also we can log out from this application. If I click on log out it will automatically redirect to our login page. Here if you want to access our home page without login, and we will not access our home page because we are not an authenticate user. So first we have to log in here, then you can access our home page. And if you don't have an account you can click on sign up, it will redirect to our sign up page. Or if you have already an account you can click on login. In our case we have already an account, just log in and then just give your user that we have registered user1@gmail.com and give the password. Then if I click on login it will automatically redirect to our home page, and here we can also create our message. This is message 3, and if I click on create message it is instant showing in front of us. So this will be an amazing project, and we have divided this project in two parts. In the first part we will create our backend, and in the second part we will create our client side, and then we will connect both backend and client together. And in the client side we will use reactjs to create reusable component, as well as we will use tailwind css to give an style in our project. Also we will use chat.ui. This is a tailwind css component that can help us to create super fast component. And then we will use React Router DOM to create routing system. Also we will use Redux to manage our global state. Then we will use Apollo client in our frontend and Apollo server in our backend to interact between client side and backend side. And in our backend side we will use nodejs. Also we will use Apollo server to create our server. Then we will use GraphQL, and with GraphQL we can access our backend with a single API link. As a database we will use mongodb and also use mongoose to create our schema and connect to our database. But in this video we will just focus on to create backend part, and in the next video we will create frontend and connect together. And you will also get the video source code. Just click on the link in the description or in the first comment. You will redirect to the project source code, and here you will get both client side and server side source code, so that if you have an error through watching this video you can just go to the source code and copy and paste in your project. I hope it will work well. So without further ado, let's get started. To create this full stack authentication system, just open a VS Code editor and create a folder and name anything that you want. In my case, I'm creating an authentication system. That's why I give the name auth. And then inside the auth folder, let's create to another folder. One is server, and the another folder will be client. Inside the server folder we will write our server code, and inside the client folder we write our client code. If I say another way, this is our backend and this is our frontend. Okay, so let's first create the backend part. To create our backend part, open the terminal by pressing Ctrl backtick and then go to our application cd auth and then go to the server folder. First of all, we need to initialize npm. To initialize npm, just write npm init and then press enter. Here you have to give the package name. By default, it will consider your folder name, that is server, so I'm keeping it as it is. Press enter and then enter. Our npm initialized successfully. To see this, go to server folder, and here you can see a file called package.json. If you click here, you will see some terminology like scripts and description names. So now we need to install some dependencies. To install these dependencies, just write down in the terminal npm I @Apollo server and GraphQL and then press enter, we can see a dependency object, and inside this we see two dependencies that we have installed, Apollo server and GraphQL. Now inside the server folder, create a file called index.js, and here import something from Apollo server. So we need to import Apollo server and import another things from Apollo server, that is start standalone server, that will comes from Apollo server standalone. And then simply create a server, const server is equal to new Apollo server, and inside the Apollo server we have to give two things. The first one is type depths and the second one is resolvers. Go to the server folder and create another folder called GraphQL, and inside the GraphQL create a file called typedepths.graphql, and then create a folder called resolvers. Inside the resolvers, create a index.js file, then write down const resolvers is equal to something, and write down a comment, some resolvers, and export this, export default resolvers. Okay. Then go to the index.js file and just import resolvers. Fine. Then we need to define type depths. So we can import type depths.graphql, but it will not work because if we see here, it is a GraphQL extension. We need to load this GraphQL file in our JavaScript file. So to do this, we need to another package that will help us to import the GraphQL file in our JavaScript file. Okay, just open the terminal and write npm I GraphQL tools load, and the second one is GraphQL tools GraphQL file loader, and press enter. Then close the terminal, import something GraphQL tools load, and the second thing is GraphQL file loader. From GraphQL tools load, we need load schema things, and then we need GraphQL file loader, and then write const type depths is equal to load schema things. Now we have to give some parameter inside this function. The first one is our file location, that is GraphQL and GraphQL typedepths.graphql, and then the second one is loaders. So comma and open the curly braces, loaders is equal to square bracket new GraphQL file loader, and then give this type depths inside Apollo server. To open the server in our browser, const something is equal to start standalone server. Here we have to give some parameter. The first one is server and the second one is listening port. Just give this server in here and then comma, open the curly braces, listen port 4000, and now from this function we destructure the URL. Now just console.log ternary operator server is ready at port $, curly braces, and give the URL. Server is ready, but we need to define some types to run this server. So we can create a type MSG, message will be string. We need to define a query, open the curly braces, write a simple query like get message. The type will be message. And then we need to create a resolvers for getting this message. Go to the resolver folder and create a file called message resolvers.js, and then write export const message resolvers is equal to open the curly braces and then write a query, open the curly braces. We have defined our query get messages, just copy it and paste in here and return some messages. Const msg is equal to this is a message, and then return this message. Now open the terminal, and here we need to start our server. So just write node index and then enter. Okay, we get an error, that is unexpected identifier. We just missed to give a comma. I think now it will work. CLS and node index. Here we see some error. The error is, did you mean to import this? Okay, so go and import this index.js. I think the another one is, here we have to give await because we want to run the server. I think that will work. Run node index. Our server is ready now. Press the control and click here. Here you see it's open our Apollo server, and now we can query something. So write some query. Our query we have created, that is get message, and we see it is automatically showing. And what do we want from this get message query? We need message. Okay, just run it. We see get message null. So it is not working because we didn't specify our resolvers in here. So we need to import this message resolvers in our index.js file. Okay, import msg resolvers from message resolvers, and then write this query and spread our message resolvers dot query. Okay, after give this query inside the query object, go to the message resolver.js. Here we need to change something. We need to create an object and then write message, give some message. This is a message. Why you have to create this object? Because if we see your type devs, here the message exists inside the object like this. So that's why you have to specify like this. Now run the server node index and then go to the browser, click the run button. Here we see this is a message. If I get another things like name and run this, it will not work because we didn't create this. Okay, just create this. Go to our type devs and write here name, its type is string, and then go to the resolvers here, name, trying code. Then if I go to browser and run this, if we click Ctrl space, we should see name, but we are not seeing because we need to reload our server. Write node index, but this is a problem. We write node index again and again. We need something that will reload our server automatic. So we have a package called nodemon. You can install npm i-g nodemon and press enter to install nodemon. But I have already installed this package. So I will just write nodemon index. Our server is running. Now if we change something here like this, you see our server is automatically reload and running. So now if I go there and press Ctrl space, we see another things name. If we click here and run our server, we see name is trying code. Okay, now we need to connect a database in our application. We use MongoDB as a database and use Mongoose, that is a library of MongoDB. With this library, we can create different type of schema and data model. Let's first install Mongoose. Just open the terminal. Now run a command npm i mongoose and press enter. After installing this package, import mongoose from mongoose. And then we need to call mongoose.connect. To connect our database, we have to give a database URL, and that will comes from MongoDB. To do that, open any browser, then search here mongodb.com. you will redirect to this website. If you don't have an account, just click try free or sign up with your email or Google account. I have already an account here, that's why I click on sign in. Give your email address and give the password and then log in. After logging in your database, just click in here and create a new project. Give the project name. I'm giving a project name auth. Click next. Click create project. Build a database. Click on free service. Change your region, anything that you want. Create. Just fill the captcha and then verify your account. Here you need to give a password. Give any password and remember it, because next time we need this password to connect our database. Click on create user, then click finish and close. Go to overview, click on database, click connect, and then here we see connect to your application. Click here, just copy this URL. Come to our application. Here I'm creating a file called config.js. Create a variable db URL, paste in here. As I say you have to remember your database password. Now you have to give your database password in here, and definitely you have to export this URL and then close it. And obviously we have to secure our database URL. You can use .env, but I'm not using this, just I'm keeping it a JS file just for showing you a demo. Then import db URL from config.js and then give this db URL. The database connection will return a promise. That's why we need to use .then create a async function. After connecting database, just we show a console log, that is MongoDB connected. After connecting MongoDB, we can start our server without any delay. So just copy it, paste inside this function. Now open the terminal, start the server, nodemon index. But we can simplify this term by giving some command in our package.json file. So click on package.json file. We can write some script, that is start nodemon index. Again open the terminal and then run a command npm start. It will automatically start our server with nodemon. Okay, we see in console MongoDB connected and server is ready at localhost 4000. Just click it to open the server. Just make sure it is working or not. Just run this query. And yeah, this is working well. Finally, we have successfully connected to our database. Now go ahead and create some functionality in our application. Inside the server folder, let's create a folder called models. Inside the models folder, create a file called user.js. Here we have to create a user schema. That means we need to define how look like our database. To create a schema, we use Mongoose. Just import schema from Mongoose. Create a schema. Const user schema is equal to new schema. Then create an object. Now we need to define a schema. At first we want to store a username. The username type will be string and default null. We need user email. The type will be same and unique true. That means one email cannot accessible 2 times in our database, and default null. Then we need password, and then we need created at, that will be also a string. Then just export this schema. User is equal to model, that will come from Mongoose, and give your schema name and then pass your schema. Now I'm giving my schema name user. This user schema type will be user schema that we have created in here. Just pass this user schema, export default user. We have successfully created our schema and export this user. Now we need to define a type depths in our GraphQL type depths file. Just go to typedepths.graphql file, create another type called user. Then go to the user schema, copy all the things and simply paste in here. Now delete some unexpected data from here. We don't need unique true, default null. We don't need this type. Just delete it and give some exclamation mark. It will indicate it is a required field. Now we need to post our data in our database. That's why we have to create a mutation. With mutation, we can post any data, we can delete some data, and we can update some data. And by using query, we can get some data from our database. So now, type will be mutation. Here, we have to create a mutation function. In our case, we are creating an authentication system. So first of all, we need to register a user. Create a function called register, and inside the register function, we get some register input like username, email, password. So give the register input, and we need to define the register input type. What type of data that we want. That will be a register type. And then what do we want to return? We want to return a user. So that's why we give user type. And obviously we didn't create register input type. So in GraphQL we have a special type called input. Give the type name register input. What do we want from user? We need username, email, password, and confirm password. Now we completed our register user mutation. Now we need to create a resolver where we create our register user logic. How to do this? Just go to resolver folder and create another file called user resolvers.js. Then create const user resolvers. Inside this object, we have to create a mutation. Our mutation will be register user. That will be our async function because it will return a promise either data go to our database or not. So that's why we need to create an async function. From this function we get three things. The first one is parent data, and the second one is user data that will come from our client side, and the third one is context. To create register user, we don't need context as well as parent. Just we need user data. In our case, that is register input. Destructure our register input. From our input field, we need username, email, password, confirm password, and that's it. Now open a curly braces, and inside this function we have to validate our user. So to do this simple validation, we have to create a folder called utils, and inside this util folder create another file called validator.js. Then create a function export const validate register input. That will be a arrow function, and from this function we need some fields username, email, password, and confirm password. And then we create simple validation. Because in this code not special something, pause the video and write down in your own. I think that will be a good practice for you. If a user didn't give any username, just we show a error username must not be empty. Same for email. We also check is email valid email or not. Here I have written some regex to validate our email, and then same thing for the password. Password must not be empty and passwords must match. And return this error. Error.length less than 1, that means there is no error. We will return true in validate variable. Now go to the user resolvers. Const destructure something from validate register input. Now we give some parameter username, email, password, and confirm password. And this validate register input return two things, that is errors and validate. Now we check if user not valid. We need to throw some error. Throw a new error. But here, for good practices, we can use Apollo error to manage error smartly. So just open the terminal and install a package npm I Apollo server error and then press enter. Now we need two things. The one thing is import Apollo error for Apollo server error, and the second one user input error. Throw new error user input error. We give errors. We are handling our error smartly. Now the next process will be we need to check user already exists in our database or not. Const old user is equal to await user, that is our model that will come from models slash user dot find one. This is a database query that will find a single things in our database. So we want to find our email. If user already exists in our database, we will throw a error, that is throw new user input error, and we give a user is already registered with the email, and we give this email by using ternary operator and $sign, and then give the error this email is taken. Okay, fine. We validate our user input successfully. Now we need to store those informations in our database. But we have a password. If user give a plain password like 123, it will directly store in our database, but this is not a right way to store password in our database. We need to encrypt our database. That's why we need a package called bcrypt.js that will help us to encrypt our password. So just open the terminal, install a new dependency, that is bcrypt.js. Import this package in our file, import bcrypt from bcryptjs. Then go down, create const encrypt password is equal to await bcrypt dot hash. Because we want to hash our password, here we give two things. The first one is what type of data we want to hash, that is our password, and then we give a salt number. If you give 2, that will encrypt your password 2 round, but to generate a hard encrypted password we give 10 round. Now finally we can save those data in our database. Const new user is equal to user, and this user comes from our user models, and then give email is equal to email. We just give email because in JavaScript if key and value is same we can just give one thing, and then username is equal to username. Now password, we don't store the exact password that is coming from the user. We're just giving our encrypted password that we have created here, and then we give created at new date.toISO string that will create a date to indicate when user has created. Okay, now we can save this user in our database. Const res is equal to await new user dot save, and then return this response. But we need to spread this because inside our user we have different type of field like name, username, email, so we need to spread all of this. .doc. In MongoDB our document store this system, and then we need to return our ID response dot underscore ID. Okay, done. Now run the server and check it's working or not. Just open the terminal and run npm start to run the server. Yes, running the server, we didn't have any error. Just go to browser. Now we need to give some data from the client, so we need to use mutation. So mutation, if we press Ctrl space, it's automatically showing us register user mutation. Just press enter. Now we need to give user input, so user input, but it is not showing any suggestion to do that. But why? That means we have done some mistake in our code, that's why it's not working. So go to your code, go to resolver and index. We see here we didn't specify any mutation in the resolver index.js. Create mutation, and inside the mutation object we need to pass a user resolver. I think first we need to import this user resolver, but it is not showing me any suggestion to import this. I think we didn't export this resolver from here. Just export it and go to the index.js inside the resolver folder and write user resolvers. Now it is showing a suggestion for me. Just click it and spread all kind of resolvers, user resolvers dot mutation. I think now it will work. Just go to your browser, check it's working or not. Just press Ctrl space. It will show you the register input. Just enter. We need to return something, that is email created at as well as password. If I run this, it will show you an error, failed to fetch, because we didn't give input data. Inside the variable section, we see register input null. So we need to create an object and then give some data like email is equal to test@gmail.com, username is equal to test, and then password will be 123456 as well as confirm password 123456. Now if I run this, it is not working. But why? Just go to your editor. Here we see some error in the console, that is cannot find module. To solve this problem, just go to resolvers and click user resolvers.js. In here we see models/user. I think we need to specify .js extension. Now it should work, but not working, and as well as validator.js. I think it should be work. Yes, it is working now. Now go to the browser and then simply press enter. Okay, again it's showing an error. The error is cannot return null for non-nullable field user.created at. Again go to your VS Code editor and go to the resolver folder and click user resolvers.js. Here we have to make sure those fields same to those fields. Here we see the field name is created at, but we give here just create at. Simply just copy and paste in here. Now it will be work. Go to browser and press run. It is saying a user is already registered with email test@gmail.com because first time when you run this function that was create this user in our database and shown some error. And in this way we can see our validator is working well because this error comes from our validate function. Okay, just change this email test2 and give the username test2, then run. Okay, we have successfully returned all of the things that we want, like username, email, created at, and password. You can see here we give the password 123456, but in here we see a horrible string. This is the power of reactjs. So we have successfully registered our user. To see this, just go to your database and click on browser collections. In browser collection we see a test folder. Inside this test folder a models called users, and we see two users. The first is test and the second one test2. That means it is working well, and we have just completed 80% backend by doing this. Now we need to create a logging functionality and authenticate our user. To do this, just go to VS Code editor. Now we have to create a login functionality. To do this, go to GraphQL folder and go to typedefs.graphql. Here we need to create another input type, that is input. Logging input email will be string and password as well as string. Then create another mutation called login user and give logging input. The type will be logging input type. Then we return a user. For this logging user mutation, we need to create our resolvers in our resolvers folder. Just go to the resolver folder and create another function, that is copy from here logging user, async logging user. Here we need destructure two things, that is logging input email and password. Inside the function we need to validate email and password. To do this, go to the utils folder, go to validate.js, write this line of code, just same as validate register input. If email field is empty, we give an error. Email must not be empty. And then check email is a valid email or not. The same thing for password, and then we return errors and valid. Now just import this valid logging input from validator.js and then write const destructure something validate login input and give email and password. After doing this, we destructure errors and validate. After doing this, we have to check if not validate, we need to return some error. So open this register user and just copy it and paste in here the same things. And then the same thing for the login user, just copy it and paste it inside the login user function. Here we change this name, that is just user, and we check not user. That means I'm giving an email that is not exist in our database. In this case, we will throw a error, that is error.general user not found, and then user input error user not found. That's it. Now we need to match our password with our database password. But as you know, the database password that we stored, this is in encrypted form. So create a variable called match password is equal to await bcrypt.compare. Inside this compare function, we need to give two things. The first one is what things we compare with, that is password, and then we want to compare with our database user password, user.password. This password come from our database because we are getting single user with this email. And again, we need to return some error if password not match, wrong credentials, user input error, wrong credentials. That's it. And then we need to return same as register user. Just copy it and paste in here. Okay, we have done it. But here is the most important thing is token. That is the main part, user authentication, and give some session to the user to use application feature. That's why we need to create a token for this user. To do this, we have a package called JSON Web Token. Through this package, we can create a token. Okay, to install this package, just open the terminal. And here install this package in PMI JSON Web Token and then press enter. Now when a user registered, we need to log in automatically, and when we log in automatic. That's why we need to create token for both cases, that is register user and login user. So we can create a function to reuse this feature. Function generate token, and inside the function we take a user, then return something. But first we need to import JSON Web Token JWT from JSON Web Token. Then JWT dot we want to create a token. That's why we need to call a sign function. And inside the sign function, first of all, we need to give an object, that is ID, email, and username. Through those information, we want to create token and also get those information in our client side through this JWT token. And the second parameter, we need to give a secret key, that is obviously secret things. So we need to store the secret key config.js file. Open the config.js file, and here export const secret key is equal to, you can write anything that you want, and then close it and go to user resolvers, import this secret key, and then give it here. And the third thing, we need to give our expire time, expire in 2 hours. You can give whatever you want. Then open this and create a variable token and generate token. Just call the function that we have created and pass the user. In this case, user is response, RES. That's it. And just return this token. We get this token in our client side, and in the client side, we can use this token to create protected router. Do the same thing in login user function. Const token is equal to generate token, and we give this user. Then return this token. Now if we run our server in pm start and go to the browser, create another mutation. The mutation is login user, it will automatically import for you a login input. Then we return username, email, password, and then created at, and the last thing, token. But this token is not working now because we didn't specify this token in our typedefs.graphql file. So just go to typedefs. We need to define in user type, that is token. It will be string and it's required, and as well as we have to make sure all of the things is working or not. Here we see we didn't replace this res to user, just replace it user and user.id. Okay, that's it. Just go to your browser. Now we see this token. Now we give some data, open a curly braces, give username, then password will be 123456. Now if I run this, here we see we have successfully done this. We get username, that is test2, email as well as password created at, and this is our token. Then do the same thing in register input. Just take this token. If I run this, obviously this user already taken. Just give test3 and username test3 and then run it. Here we see we get our token when you register a user. Now we protect some activity from the normal user. In our case, we will just protect our activity, that is creating a post from the normal user. So go to the type depths, just create another mutation called create message, and inside this function we want to get message type is string and it's required. It will return a message type. For this time we delete this name and it's required, so go to message resolver and here create a mutation and then create a async function, that is create message. Copy and paste in here. We don't need parent, just we need message, and then this is the most important things, that is context. We need some data from context because we want to protect this functionality from normal user. To do this activity, we need to check a user authenticate or not. So how do we understand the user is authenticate or not? We can understand it through user token. Just get this context and then open this curly braces. We are getting this context, but we are not passing any data to the context. To do this, just go to index.js file. Here inside this function we have to create a context. It will be an arrow function, and we destructure a request, then create an arrow function, open the curly braces and auth token. We want to request our header to get this authorization token. To do this, request.header.authorization. That's how we can get our authorization token from the client side. Okay, then copy this auth token and then go to the message resolvers. Here we need to create another function, that is auth context, that will give me an authentication user through this JWT token. Just go to the utils folder and create another file, checkauth.js. Inside this we need to create a function export const auth context is equal to, we get a context is equal to, now inside this function first we need the token, so we can get this token from auth header is equal to context dot auth context. Just copy it and then paste in here. Now we check if auth header is exists, create a variable const token, then auth header dot split barrier and then give a space. Now here we will get our token. We check if token exists. Just we verify our token to our secret key. To do this, open a try-catch block, const user is equal to JWT. We need JSON web token. Import JWT from JSON web token. Then JWT dot call a function verify. Give this token from there, and then we need secret key that we created in our config.js file. So just import it, and then we get this user. Just return the user. If we have an error, just throw an error. In this case, the error will be authentication error. So import this authentication error. Authentication error will be invalid or expired token. And then if not token, we can give simple error, that is authorization token must be barrier.token. If auth header is not exist, in the else case, we can throw a new error. Authorization header must be provided. We can delete this else condition. We don't need this. If I go to message resolvers and call this function const user is equal to auth context, that will come from utils check.js, and give this context. Now we check simple validation. If message dot trim is equal to empty, we just give an error, that is the message must not be empty. If user give some message in message field, we simply create a message. Const new message is equal to new message model. But we didn't create any message schema in Mongoose file. So just go to models and create a new file called message.js. Just copy this code from user.js and go to message.js. Just paste in here. Here we have to change something. First of all, we changed message schema, and here we give this name msg, and inside this schema we have to change this message is string, username is string, created at string, user, the type will be schema.types.object_id and reference to the users. Okay, that's it. Okay, and then change this user to message. Now go to the message resolvers. Here we have to import this message and make sure you give here .js extension. Now we can create a new message. So give this message msg, and then user will be user.id. User ID will come from authenticate users, and then give username user.username. Give created at new date.toISO string, and then just create a variable called msg message and just save this message to the database. New message, call this save function. That's it, and we can return this message. Now we have successfully created a protected functionality, that is create message, and this functionality only accessed by authenticate user. In the same time, we can replace this hard code into a functional code. Inside the get message, we can delete this name and then create some query. I think it should be get messages because we want to get all of the messages. Go to the type depths and change it to the get messages, and it will require go to message resolvers and then create a query to the database. Open the try catch block. Const message is equal to await message dot find. This is a query to get all the messages from our database, and then we need to sort these messages with time, and we can create this by doing sort, and we want to sort by created at -1, and we want to sort created at -1. Now inside the catch block, we need to throw a error, and inside this try block, we need to return this message. Here we can give a simple validation, that is if don't exist any message in our database, we can throw a simple error, that is message not exist. And open the terminal and make sure any error occurred in your console or not. We have some error, that is await. This is an error. We need to make an async function to use await. So just give it async and Then we see 34 line resolver.js that says message has already been declared. No problem. We can call it save message and we can return this save message. And then another error is could not find checkout. Okay, no problem. We have to specify this .js extension. I think it should work now. Not working. Go to checkout.js. Here we see config. We need to specify config.js and now it should work. Yes, it's working. There's a lots of error. So that's it. Go to the browser and create another mutation, that is create message, and the message will be this is a message, and then we get this message. If I run this, we get another error. We can solve it in 1 second. Just go to VS Code editor and go to index.js, go there and spread our message resolvers dot mutation. Now it will work well. Just go to the browser and if I run this, okay, we have successfully done this. Yes, I see this error, but we have done this because it is showing me a message that is invalid or expired token that is coming from our token validation, and definitely we need to pass a header variable. So go to the header section, then write a barrier that we specified in our code, and then we need token. So to get this token, just go to the logging function and run this. From there, you can get this token, just copy it and inside the header authorization after barrier, just give one space and paste in here. Then if I go to create message and run this function, we have created our message successfully, but here is an issue. How can we solve this issue? If I console it, message, and go to the browser and run it again, come back, and here we see we get these messages, but here is a problem, that is we have to pass just message, but here we are passing all of this object. We didn't created this object type in our type depths. Now I'm not gonna creating any message type like this. I'm just return message dot message, and inside the query get messages we have to return a message array, because when you query in our database there are so many messages and it will be stored in an array. Inside the square bracket you have to define your message type and it should be required. Then go to the message resolvers. We need to create a empty array, that is let message list is equal to square bracket, that means this is an empty array. Run a for loop, let I is equal to 0 and it will run message.length less than I is equal to message.length, and then we need to push something in message list, message.push. We have to push an object, that is message is equal to message, and then we need every single message, so we just simply pass our iterator and then we're getting every single object, and inside every single object we need just one thing, that is dot message. Here we don't need to pass object, we can simply pass our message list. Then go to the browser and if I run, it is working now. Now create more message, like this is the message 2. We need to run this function and run this message 2 and then message 3. If I go to get messages, run this, and here we see message 3, message 2 and so on. If I check our database, go to our database and just refresh our database. Here you can see one another models, that is messages. And inside the messages field, you can see this is a message and this message has created by test2. So finally guys, we have successfully created our server side, or you can call it backend. Now we will work on our client side, where we use this GraphQL API and connect to our backend.